Maybe give an extra minute, do you think, Tom, there, just to get a few more people in?
Yeah, should we give it till
a couple of minutes past?
Yeah, give it a couple of minutes past. Can't imagine we were the only people that had problems with Zoom this morning. So
very true.
Tell you what, we'll give it another minute because it seems to be growing a little bit more now.
Yeah, so okay.
Yeah, let's get cracking.
Yeah,
let's get cracking.
Great.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending this morning's webinar. So just as a sort of brief way of introduction, I'm conscious of time and I want to leave some time for Q&A at the end as well. For the eagle-eyed people that may recognise myself and Kevin from the webinar invite, you might have already noticed who we are, but for those who haven't, my name is Tom Mercer. I'm the Commercial Director at Gainline. I'm joined today by Kevin, who is our Technical Director and lead facilitator of our Sprint offering, in which we'll go into in more detail later on. And we're lucky to be joined today as well by Emma, who is one of our clients. Emma is the Head of Talent and Skills at Manchester Digital. And yeah, we'll be explaining a little bit, I guess, from a real perspective, what the Sprint looks like, how it works, and the kind of impact that it has on the business. So Kevin, do you want to launch the presentation? Yeah. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that without any problems. So just a bit of a sort of, I guess, a brief agenda then. So I'm going to go through just a couple of slides. It won't be death by slides, you'll be glad to know, but just a couple of slides about us and who we are, just to give a bit of context as to why we're talking about the things that we are today. And then going to hand over to Kevin, who is going to basically go through an overview of how the Sprint is structured, what it looks like, each and every aspect of it. And then after that, we'll be going into a sort of a bit of conversation with Emma, and we'll show you some live boards as well, so you can see what it looks like in real time. Once I've done with my part, I understand there's a Q&A box as well. So if you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, don't hesitate to drop them in there and I'll try and answer them. And if it's not something that I can answer, then I'm sure Kevin or Emma will be able to answer them at the end. So next slide, please, Kev. And the one after. So ultimately, we exist as a business to help our clients achieve what we call instrumental gains. So within our business, we refer to negatives as drains and positives as gains. We like to drive instrumental gains for our clients. We do that through our two core offerings. So for those who may have had a look at our website, you may have noticed a few of these bits already. But our two core offerings are our bespoke development. So we have a fantastic development team in-house at Gainline that are capable of building websites and systems completely from scratch. These are obviously designed around sort of operational optimization and improving and streamlining our clients' businesses. And we also have our Sprint offering, which is what we're going to discuss today. Now, the Sprint is it's a modern approach to business consultancy is probably the best way I can put it. So traditional business consultancy is often long-term, retainer-led. And this is more over a 2-week period and a bit more structured and a bit more tangible. But again, Kevin can go through that in a bit more detail shortly. Next slide, please, Kevin. Thank you. I wanted to drop this slide in as well, just to kind of give you a bit of an idea as to the kind of client that we work with, or more importantly, the kind of business that may benefit from, or organization that may benefit from using sprint methodology to either overcome a challenge or achieve a goal. So this is just a handful of our clients, but I think it illustrates the sort of width and breadth of the kind of organization that we work with. So you've got Dogs for Rescue on there, who are a relatively small not-for-profit, who used our sprint offering to improve culture and help set company values, which are, of course, massively important for them. But we also work with businesses like Co-op, academies and sports breaks, who are obviously much larger scale organizations and therefore need slightly different help and offering. And then going to Your Flock as well. So Your Flock are a startup business, or probably just post startup, but again, a small business based locally to us in Manchester, who used our sprint to grow their business and achieve a bigger revenue growth, basically.
Great. So I think it now comes over to me, Tom.
It does indeed. So yeah, any questions that you guys have throughout this, let me know.
Great. Thanks for that, Tom. So what I'll be running through today is what a growth sprint is. I'll cover the kind of theory and methodology over this, but I'm hoping that you can also take something away today. So this isn't just like a sales pitch about what we do, but we're hoping that you can take some of the methodologies that we're going to share with you and take them away. And if you've got any questions afterwards or during, you can do those as Tom said. So first of all is just to explain what a growth sprint is. So it's a series of workshops that are used to rapidly align your team and look to solve key challenges in a business. So like Tom mentioned earlier, these could be anything from sales or working in your team and the culture. And what we discovered through these workshops and the methodology of it is that it can be applied to anything in relation to problem solving. So what I'll be covering today is the types of things that we do in there, and why it's called a sprint as well. So a couple of key elements to take away from here is that this is obviously the clue is in the name of sprint. It's about rapidly making decisions and putting a plan together of goals that lead you to growth. And when we talk about growth, that can be anything from pushing sales or making amendments to your bottom line. So whether that's improving staff relationships, like we talked about before, about culture or processes or internal methods, any of those elements can push growth from a different perspective. A big part of what we do is, because we're an external company, we look to make this really, really tight focused and deliver it quickly. I think a big part of what we do in this as well, and everybody will have experiences of this, is that when you try and solve problems internally within your business, we've all been part of a meeting that's either been moved because people can't join it and are flexible about internal meetings. And we've all been part of meetings where just one person talks and nothing really comes out of it. There's no goals at the end of those meetings. What we're looking to do is really put a process and methodology around problem solving, and also making sure that the team are aligned in there as well. So we do this within a 2-week window. So there's 3 workshops that are involved in that 2-week window. And what we'll look to do is decide on a focus area, because within a business, there are many things that you can concentrate on, but we decide to use one area. So if I was to take an e-commerce site as an example, we might want to focus on customer retention or repeat customer orders. And what we're doing there is that we would pull together people from different levels and different areas of the business as well, to make sure that there are different voices heard within the problem solving. So again, if I was taking e-commerce as an example, you might have the owner, you might have somebody from sales or marketing, you might have somebody from deliveries, maybe they've got a warehouse where they like ship out their own products. We bring all of those people together to work on how to identify the drains, but also more importantly, suggesting the gains that come from there. So we really feel like this helps kind of align the team, because you can get a lot of different voices within an organization, and bringing everybody together gets real buy-in, and people think that they're having an impact, and they see that there's a way that they can impact the company and help them move forwards as well. We keep it really tight-knit, we keep it really close, we keep it really quick, so that after the 2-week sprint, there is a delivery at the end of that where you've got a hell of a lot of goals to go at, and you've got a lot of targets to try and achieve. And the big thing that we do afterwards as well is we hold you accountable. So having somebody external to come in and help on this problem-solving journey, but also to, I suppose, hold your feet to the fire a little bit and make sure that you're implementing these plans to make sure that that growth is constantly being iterating over. So what we tend to do is we break it down into 2 weeks. We've got the drains week where we focus on the problems, and we've got the gains week where we focus on the solutions. What we do as a company before the sprint is we do a deep dive into the business and look at the focus area and do interviews, we do surveys, we kind of embed ourselves into that organization to get a really good understanding of what it is they do day to day and what the problems are that the company is facing. Into that drains week, we start doing workshops, and there are further slides on this, so I'll just kind of cover this as a top level for now. So we do the drains workshop, gains workshop, and then post-sprint, like I mentioned, we do check-ins with the company. So the drains week is broken down into what I was just saying before, is the interviews, team interviews, analysis of that, and then we get into the workshop. So we'll prep for the workshop and deliver the workshop on that Friday to look at the drains. Moving into the following week, we do the gains workshop, experiments workshop, and then do the analysis and delivery of that sprint. A key thing that I'd like to talk about today is what's done within these workshops. And we have got some boards, and I'll be able to show you some live examples of this. But there are a few key elements to these workshops that really make the process what it is. And the two things that I'd like to highlight that you can take away today, and again, I'll get into more detail into it shortly with the live boards, is that all of these are done in silence with music on in the background, via note taking. You can do these remotely via online whiteboards or in person with sticky notes. And then things are voted on in silence also. The key element of this is that you don't get conversation, and you don't get pulled and pushed into different areas where you might have the loudest talker in the room will always get their say, whereas there might be somebody who's a little bit quieter who doesn't get theirs. So that's where we get the alignment, is making sure that everybody has time and space to think. So when we're looking at the drains workshop, we look at what the problems might be, and it gives everybody the opportunity to write down a note in silence and just have that time and space to think about any problems that there might be in relation to the focus area that we've decided. The voting element, again, plays into that alignment, but also giving people that time and space. So what happens is the voting is done, and people are giving votes where they can vote on what they think the highest priority drain is, or in the gains workshop, the highest priority gain is. Again, people can use those votes. Everybody has 8 votes, and they can vote on things as they best see fit. And what you tend to get then is the things that people feel most strongly about tend to come out on top, and that's across the board, not just say upper management saying we all need to concentrate on this. What we tend to find is that there are people working within organizations where they might be doing what's seen as quite a manual task and a repetitive, but they might see drains in that area where something's taking them an hour and it could take them 10. And the impact of that over the course of a week or a month can be quite huge to the business. So what we start to see is that ideas start to be formulated from everywhere. And what we're doing is we're helping facilitate people through this process and through this methodology, the best way of solving those problems. What we do at the end of this is we have all of these deliverables. Now, these are the boards that we work on, and I will get to sharing these in a bit more detail shortly. is that you can see that we've done this remotely here, and we've done this on a product called Miro, which might be worth looking at if you want to start to use any sort of whiteboard functionality. It's amazing. It's an online tool that you can use for collaboration. People can drop in on the same board, write sticky notes, dragging and dropping. It's really, really good for collaboration. And this has the tools within it to do voting, etc., that I've just mentioned before. So what I'll do now is I'll just stop sharing this briefly, and I will open up one of the boards that we've been working on with Manchester Digital, and I'll show you the first part of the drains that we look at. So, like Tom mentioned, we're really fortunate to have Emma with us from Manchester Digital today, who we did this drains workshop on. And we'll go into a little bit more detail shortly about what their focus area was. But I'll give you a bit of an example about what we've done here. So you can see here that everybody has had their own area to type in. So the first thing we look at within the drains workshop is what's moving us towards the focus area. So we like to start off on a positive note, not just looking straight at the problems, but what we're doing, we must be doing something well. So what are those things? And we get people to talk aloud about these, and we get some positive vibes going in within the room. You can see everybody has their own area to work on. We then start to look at the drains, and then that's when the methodology and the process kicks in, where people do all this noting in silence, and then they choose their top 5 and they move them over to this board where we start to categorize and start to group elements together. So people will have the same problems that they see as being an issue. We'll group them together. We'll confine them into one sticky. And then what we'll do is we'll put them on a board and we'll open it up where people get 8 votes, and they can use those 8 votes however they best see fit. They could use 8 votes on one item, or they could use 1 vote on 8 individual items, or 4 on one and 2 on others, so on. And what you tend to see then is that the relevant top priority drains come out on top. And I think one key action that people can take away from this presentation today is this methodology here called How Might We's. And what we find is that if you have a problem and you give a problem to somebody, that can be really difficult to think about a solution sometimes. So what we do is we flip that on its head and we change it into a question instead. So what we'll do is we'll get the problem and then start that by rephrasing it with the sentence, how might we? And then go into what that question might be related to the problem. So I'll just zoom in on one here. So we've got one of the issues that Manchester Digital had is that they lent on the members' goodwill for the delivery of the programme. Like, how do they make sure that people are bought into that and bought into that delivery? And we changed that into, how might we reduce dependency on members and their goodwill? And having that as a question, you can then start to think of solutions and answers to that. So we take those into the next workshop, and we have a workshop where we look at generating solutions for all of those top 8 problems that have been highlighted. And again, these can range from all different sorts of topics, from hiring in external people to help, or improving things that are working internally, or introducing new elements to it. And again, we're getting the whole team to contribute towards all of these. They're given that time and space to think, and then they're given that time and space to read everybody's suggestions and vote on them and start to pull those out. From this, we then start to look at what are the best things to hit and what are the best things to do first. We start to look at that and start to look at what impact it's going to have, but also how much effort that's going to have. Something might have a really high effort. Something might have a really high impact, but take a lot of effort. And those are the things we might want to turn into projects, but something might have a really high impact, but a really low effort. So those are the things that we want to do now, because they're going to be able to be something we can do quickly. And there's going to be something that we can do now, and it's going to have a really big impact straight away. So I'll just jump back to my presentation briefly, just because we've got Emma here, and there's one thing that I'd just like to show before we jump into that. If I can get that right, balls. So like I mentioned, we've got Emma from Manchester Digital, and I'll let her talk in a bit more detail about this. But we wanted to get a better understanding of where their apprenticeship scheme was, but also how they could attract more employers to be part of the delivery of apprenticeships. They have plenty of people trying to get an apprenticeship, but not as many being able to deliver it. So we work with them through this sprint methodology to try and deliver that growth that we could then keep checking in with them, holding them accountable and seeing that progress as well. So I'll just stop sharing here. And I'll introduce Emma from Manchester Digital, who you can already see on the screen there. Thank you very much for joining us, Emma. Appreciate your time.
No problem. I'm glad to be here and share our experience.
Great. So would you just be able to give me a brief overview of Manchester Digital, first of all, but also the problems that you were facing with your apprenticeship scheme?
Absolutely. So we're a not-for-profit organisation. We've been around for about 20 years in one shape or another, but we are a trade body for digital and technology employers. So we work with around 500 tech employers across the ecosystem in the region. And one of the things we do with them is look at talent and skills. Everyone is aware that there's an ongoing challenge. And one of the products and services that we offer is an independent apprenticeship provision on a couple of focused digital apprenticeship pathways. And software was where we started with that. And the reason we came to work with Gainline as we moved and grew that element of our provision into new apprenticeship pathways.
Great, perfect. So obviously I've talked about the kind of process and methodology that we go through in that sprint. What parts stood out of that process and methodology that really helped you kind of focus on that problem?
There's a few parts for me. It was just incredibly beneficial across the board, and I'm sure we'll dig into that. But for me, having a cross group, a team around the board, where if we were going to tackle this problem on our own, we probably wouldn't have invited those on the periphery, but they actually were incredibly helpful, useful and insightful to some of the things that came to the fore that we are delivering now that are having an impact. But for us, it was being led and supported by a team of experts, but you not providing the solutions for us was my biggest sort of thing of that process. It was us coming up with those solutions to those problems ourselves. So it wasn't something that was impractical, improbable for our organisation, because as a consultant, you don't know our organisation, all those kinds of fear factors. It was the complete opposite, actually. But picking up on focusing the practical, tangible and deliverables from keeping us on track in those sessions that we needed to be able to come out with some things like that, so we felt that we were achieving some of those very quick wins and some of the, slightly longer wins, and had started that road as well for us. It was very interesting, the dot mechanism in terms of the votes and priorities, that different voices and different things came up that I might have assumed, being right in the middle of it, were the things that perhaps we needed to do to make the most difference. And as we'd already started, thinking as we were going through, we can do those very quickly. Let's get on with them. Let's do them.
Yeah.
And had started putting those into practice before I think we'd started some of the other elements of the process. So those are the things that stood out for me, really, the tangible and keeping that momentum, the way it's delivered. I absolutely recommend you stick to the time frame and make sure you have that commitment, because everyone has things that comes up and you lose that discussion, that mindset of the time. So if you don't get through that and all get that buy-in at the end, it starts to lose, and you would lose the impact most certainly.
Definitely. And we always see that. It's like I said at the start, is that when you have meetings that are arranged internally, they get bumped, they get moved, discussions go off topic, and you talk about something else. And by the time you know it, what we've probably achieved in that 2 weeks has taken you 2 months because things moved around.
And then some, certainly, because we were so close to it. And you're right, actually someone without knowing may steer the direction of that, and the gain line sprint allows that dominance or dynamic to be taken away. And that was really important, because otherwise one person's leading it and everyone feels like they have to follow, and there could be challenges then when you come to doing some of that implementation of the actions and ownership and accountability. And that was fundamental to us because we were a really small team. So we all have to play our part in that, so we all have to be on the same page with what we're going to do and why.
Yeah, definitely. And there was one thing I wanted to pick up that you mentioned earlier, which was, it's worth people knowing that we don't generate the solutions for you. We can contribute. We do tend to make recommendations, etc. But this is all about unlocking that potential that's within the team already. And I think that's a key thing that people can take away, is that there will be members of your team, like I mentioned earlier, who have maybe got thoughts about how things can be done better, but they might not have all the context and information behind it. This helps everybody, bring everybody together, get alignment on what we're looking at, and start to pull those ideas out. And that's what it's great for. Brilliant. So are there any kind of key wins that you've got out of the sprint that we've done, and anything that you've been able to really push forward in the time that we did it?
Absolutely, a lot, and it's still ongoing. It's still a work in progress, and it's changing and maturing the more we are digging into the original actions, and then things are coming off those. But the benefits, I guess, for me, or the outcomes, I guess, and impact so far is we've had a massive increased efficiency internally in our processes. So just to reiterate, the whole point of what we were trying to get to was grow the number of employers that hired through our apprenticeship program as opposed to another provider. It's a really competitive place. So what we did through the sprint, very importantly, that filtered into all of our other actions, was revisited our why and our USP and started to reframe that. And we did that through a sort of shared vision, as opposed to this one thing coming, and there's been a change of team and all those kinds of things. So really went back to basics, that everybody was really bought into the why. And that filtered down into a complete revamp of our marketing strategy and the way we frame and the language we talk about our apprenticeship across the team, not just within the apprenticeship team, but the wider organisation. And that gave us more impactful conversations. So we saw some transfers through to interested, to warm prospecting, through to signing up with us. One of our other challenges was actually we're not talking to the right people sometimes, or that decision making could be shorter if we get to the right people. So we did a big piece of work around that, and we've met with a lot of CTOs now. We've got a great list of contacts, and they are helping us inform our process and our program to better meet their needs where there's some barriers, because that came back in some of that. But also some of them have said, actually, we want to know more about this. We want to get involved. So doing some of that hard work to get to those right people is starting to pay off now as well. And we've got a number of sort of follow-ups of that. But we've also identified, really crucially for us, that we had skill sets, gaps within our skill sets of our core team, and we needed some training. So we put those things in straight away, and we've recruited and slightly restructured the team based on what we needed to do to have an excellent product that fitted our why, that gave our learners and our employers the best possible journey with us. And that's what we kind of hook our hat on now. So there's really great things happening. I can't say, we've got 100 new apprentices, but it's massively going in the right direction. And next quarter we're hoping to see a significant uplift of new pathways and new employers joining us. So really positive across the board for me.
Great. So you've done a few things there.
Sounds like
you're definitely being busy.
And we've got some great partnerships that have come out of it as well, from some of those actions that have actually said, we need to look for other solutions here. We need to be more resilient. Let's look at that and be more clear about what we want out of those partnerships. And we're working with some fantastic people now, and have embedded an employer engagement plan, because I think we've taken some things for granted, and just by stepping back and asking ourselves some very tough reflective questions, we've been able to address some of those things and make our employer experience better than with somebody else.
And I think that what you've been able to do from those sprints as well has been like a testament to yourselves as Manchester Digital, because I think that when people go into this journey, they have to be bought into it. You know, we always say that this isn't going to be easy. This is going to be hard. You know, if it was easy, you would have done it already. So it's really hard. And, you know, like you said, kind of pulling out all those, the good things that we're doing, but the negatives as well, but then being able to actually implement things off the back of that and get improvements and get them quickly is great. And being able to take those and pick them up and run with them and constantly keep on pushing forward. You know, myself and Tom do talk about, we recommend we do kind of sprints on a regular basis, because you can kind of get quite a lot done, but then what's the next focus area? What are we going to look at next? And use that process and that methodology to try and push another area forward. But yourselves being able to take that plan that we worked on and propose to you and take that away and start to push and iterate on top of those and get those little quick wins, but also work on the larger projects. You need that buy-in from yourselves and your team as well. And I think that's what one thing the sprint does is, I mentioned it earlier, people are bought into that growth, are bought into those problems and bought into the solutions as well, because they're the ones who are helping form them.
It was really interesting, actually, because those that were on the periphery that were asked to come to this, and they said, yeah, fine, because you're asking me to, and you know, the managing director's asking you to. And I think they felt going in, a couple of them, that maybe I'm not going to have so much to contribute here, or I'm not going to be able to help you with solutions only from maybe this angle or this angle. But actually, they were probably the most useful to have around the table, because it gave someone that wasn't so close to it, that wasn't sort of, you know, very specific in needing it to be done one way or another. And I was very conscious, depending on, you know, your own style of working and management and all those kinds of things. And I know my style, so I had to pull myself back somewhat in those and let other people kind of drive and have that voice as well. And I think that was really useful for me to see what other people felt would be useful, and to really take that space to listen. But I think for me, one of the good takeaways and the differences felt was the time the Gainline team took beforehand to really understand Manchester Digital, but what we were trying to achieve. So coming into those sessions, it didn't feel like a really generic consulting, taking us through the motions. It felt like you really understood, especially because you had to probe and challenge and direct us a little bit, and keep us focused. It helped that you knew that, and I think that was a real added value, a part of our experience, well, certainly my experience.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm probably going to leave a little bit more time for if there's any Q&As. I'll check in on that shortly. But is there any other kind of key takeaways from that process that you've not mentioned there? Or
I think you I'd mentioned it, and you've reiterated the fact that it isn't about getting someone else to come up with the solutions. You know, there are some great suggestions that the team made to us to think about, but it wasn't here's a list of recommendations, go away, do what you like, you know, do it, don't do it, we're getting paid anyway. It absolutely is not that experience. And as a small team and as a quite agile, multifunctioning team, we really valued that. For me, I think it's allowed us to give a better sort of overall solid confidence as a team, talking about our provision, selling our provision, and thinking about how do we share the good stuff, because we're so busy getting on with it. But this has allowed us a key structure of actions to shout about what we've been doing that's really positive as well.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you very much for that. So I can see there have been some questions asked, and I can see they've already been answered, but it might just be worth me chatting through these quickly here. One about is, when is it too early for a growth sprint? But like Emma and Tom have mentioned there, is that this is about kind of problem solving and pushing forward. So I don't think to be honest, you could do this as part of launching your business, to know like whether it's what target market you can go into or what product offering you've got, and looking at that and just a different way of structuring growth and how to look at that and the process of doing it. An optimal size of group of participants. Yeah, so we've done these with anything from 2 to 8 people. We try and say no more than 6. because it just starts to get a bit long-winded and you get repetitiveness more than anything. You kind of find that when you get to around 5 or 6, as you start to grow that group, you get similar answers and similar solutions. So we try and get that narrowed down. And obviously we want to do these quickly and we want to get good momentum on them. And the more people involved in that, the longer it takes. So around about 5 or 6 is like kind of top, but you can do it with 2 or 3. How do you know if my business needs a consultant? I suppose kind of going back to what Tom's answered there is that we've kind of looking at that consultancy area, but we don't label ourselves as consultants. We facilitate growth within your business, and it's the power of the methodology in the workshops that we deliver that help get that. And then somebody's asked what happens after the sprint. Would you recommend a next stage? So I mentioned previously that we'd always recommend doing more sprints in a row to try and get that constant growth. But what we deliver at the end of a sprint is a report, but also a plan. So we break down those solutions into smaller blocks and smaller digestible chunks that people can go away and start to iterate on. And what we do, we have like weekly, fortnightly, then monthly check-ins to see how those are progressing, and checking with the team and checking with individuals, because what we aim to do is that everybody who is in that session, we aim to give them actions to take away and implement within the business. So we always have a focus on delivering goals and making sure those are being done, but it's all about doing it small, iteratively. We're not too bothered about doing large items. That's the end result. But we want the smaller things to take part in between them and making sure that they're being delivered.
Just to add to that from
Yes.
from our perspective, I really liked the fact that there's projects, the differentiation between the projects and the experiments, because you can get some quick wins, you can feel like you're progressing, but also in a really subtle way, you can not put too much pressure, but enough pressure to keep momentum and keep progressing on a team that has lots of other things to do. But it's really essential that you do commit time and allow people within that team that are taking some of this extra way, that time to make sure they are moving forward incrementally as well.
Yeah, great. I can see there's another question there from Andrew about the best size. So I've mentioned about the best size for a sprint, but he's mentioned there, you might have a team of 50. I think it's key to choose relevant people from that 50 who would be able to contribute, but also taking the findings away back to the team and talking about what that might entail. So we always say that with the solutions that we come up with, there is an owner of those, but the owner might not be delivering the things that are the outcome or the actions within it. So it's making sure that you pull in the relevant people to make sure that they can contribute as well. And hopefully, if you get people involved at different levels within the organization, they talk about that then, and they have that positive feeling. And obviously that can contribute a lot to culture, because anybody will know where they've been in a business, and you kind of always hear those whispers and the talkings around moanings about things could be done better. Well, this is the opportunity to help make things better. And that's what we really look to do, is really unlock that potential in the team. And one thing I always say is that we can't change anybody's lives with this, but we look to make people's working lives better. And we really feel that this delivers that, is that they can look at how they can impact their day-to-day lives when they're in their job, and to enjoy their job, because the more you enjoy your job, the better work you do. So we're really trying to push people towards that internal thinking about how they can have an impact within there as well.
A question for Emma as well. I think, Emma, you may have already seen it, from John on LinkedIn. What would you say the most challenging part of the sprint was?
I think so the most challenging part for us as a team was to make sure we were absolutely steadfast in keeping that time commitment outside of those sessions to progress the actions. Because if you don't do those, you are wasting your time. And I think no one goes into that process wanting to do that. You want to come out with some solutions. So you have to allow yourself, but allow your team. And if you're a cross-cutting team that's been pulled into that design, into the sprint, then those managers or whoever manages those teams, if you're a bigger organization, has to also give that buy-in of they need to be allowed time to do whatever it is they're doing in order to do that. Because as I think Kev just mentioned, if you're the owner of an action doesn't mean you're the sole person that's running with that action. You are going to be contributing to other things as well. So that's the kind of, on that side. But one of the most challenging things in the process was picking the things to do and not saying we need to do all of these things and trying to run them and then it all falls down. So it was actually saying we know we could do all of these things, but what we're going to pick to be focused and see some change and difference now or very soon are this and this. So and that's certainly a personal challenge as well.
Just to chip in on that one is that I always tend to, we always have onboarding sessions with each individual who are taking part in that sprint to kind of make them aware of what they're going to be going through. And we always try and say it's going to be difficult. It's going to be different as well, because it's a completely different way of working. The whole doing things in silence with no talking and just music on in the background is weird when you first start doing it. But there is power that comes from that when you start to see the end results. So it's very different. You've got to get people bought into it. But I think after that first session, people can really start to see the value of that.
It is an incredible cliche, but it's it's for a reason. Often cliches that trust the process and trust the team, and I think that's what you've got to do, because whoever you're working with, whether it's a partnership, whether it's a paid consultancy, you have to trust that relationship. And if you don't get that and you don't feel that, it's like with a mentor or a coach, you don't get that, it's just not going to move forward. So and for us that just clicked.
Brilliant.
Cool. So I'm conscious of time. Obviously, we've had a good few questions so far. Does anybody else have any more questions or anything that you'd like us to discuss or go into more detail about before we sign off? I'll open the floor for a few minutes just to see if anything comes through. Whilst I'm waiting to see if anything comes through, I just want to say special thanks to everybody that's come today. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. And hopefully you found it useful as well. Hopefully you found that, maybe you can implement some of this yourself, within your business, or maybe you feel like potentially you would be interested in seeking out whether we could add value to your business. So I think Chloe from GBA has put a couple of links in the webinar chat. One of those many links is a free consultation link. So it's basically just an informal chat with one of the team just to see whether whether we could add value to you guys. So feel free to fill that out. Obviously, there's no obligation on there. I think we don't have any more questions. So I feel like everybody might be satisfied with what they've had.
Yeah, looks that way.
Okay. Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks for your time, everybody. And much thanks to Emma for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Emma.
No problem.